Welcome, welcome. It is July 11th, 2023, and we are here together to talk about our trip to Scotland and Ireland and whatever other interesting topics come up. So we have Wendy Napolitano, Addison Ames, Joan and myself, Susan Mulhern, and I think we're gonna get started with a little light language and whatever translations come up or channeled messages, we'll just go with the flow. So,
Sounds good. And since you have the floor, I'll go ahead and let you start.
all right. Okay. Tuosia i tia kuto hi si kaitia kuta i tia hi si kia kuto hazia kuta i si kuto i hi tia i ko hi hazia kia kuto hi si kuta i hi tia ko hazia kuto i si tia kia to i si ko hi si kutia hu kia i si kuto tia i si kia to hazia ku i si kia i to i si kia i tuko. It is the honor of the Galactic Dragons. I am here to join your gathering, to extend my energies with your own, so that you can expand your light outward and share it with the world in a greater capacity by extending your collective energies and amplifying them. And continue to go on these journeys of self-discovery to different parts of the world that you are called to go to bring your energies and anchor in the light codes to clear your ancestral lineage that needs clearing. Wherever your heart calls you, make sure to listen to your inner guidance and continue to step forward in your authentic truth. We are here to honor and support you in all ways. Please call upon us, the Galactic Dragons, as you feel called to do so. We extend our dragon hearts to you with much love. Blessings.
Lovely, thank you. So while you were doing your light language, I was like connecting in with an energy. I'm not quite sure whose, but I guess I'll see what they say. Tutuira tapahira tutuira ma papapuira ta ichikruirana itutuira taira takira tu namarataira ta ishijuara pahi katatuirana tati tatuira pa kai kitkutuirana mata ishijuara patahirana taka itatuirana hiuruira marata hurorira rata ruruira rata ishijuara Kiurun yurut ia pahaira ka ina ta ita te uira ta inya ita ka ira ta shishuara paya na nara ka hiru tu ira paya ta ta kira na ta ira ta uru tu ira na Shishua kai ta ta ira ta ura na ra ka ira tu ara paya ra ta ira ta ia ka ira na ya. We are awakening you to these new vibrations, to these new codes, to these new higher levels of access throughout your crystalline DNA, throughout your physical bodies, which is why you are having many of these contractions, as you are calling them, spasms. These contractions are the changing of the cellular structure and the DNA within your specific body, and many others may be feeling these vibrations as well. Some people will get the vibrations, but they won't necessarily have any type of a spasm or convulsion, or even feel or sense the energy. However, they are here. With this new convergence that has just recently come down within the solar equinox, many of you are listening to solar flares and paying attention to that. And with the attention of the sun and the central sun and the access to your multidimensional and intergalactic selves, many of you are beginning to travel more and more and feeling these new opportunities open up to yourself. Do not be fearful. Do not be fearful. Simply breathe them in. Find yourself out on a walk, exploring, connecting in with self, connecting in with love. We simply guide you to connect in with love. That is the fastest and easiest way to connect in with your own vibration of who you are as a soul being within the universe. We come to you today as the Interdimensional Galactic Council, and I am coming as the representative of Tenyana Melamine, Wendy's higher soul self, her true self, who she is as she has come to explore this universe within her creator being self. Many blessings to you. Wow, that was a lot. I was like, who is this? Like my ego was up to the side going, who is talking? Like, this sounds like light language I haven't really heard or said before. I don't know, maybe I have, but it felt different and new. And so I was like, who is this being? And so I was like, what? Tenyana, huh? Like, that was like surprising to me.
Ushahani ko halata natutuka natutuke shikileki chikanahat ko unahati hiski hile na natuna tatatikat katiniti nasakuna similitini hishishino anatiku. Namaste.
Namaste.
If you guys get any translation.
You're supposed to get the translation or ask for it.
We are here to join with you with these beautiful energies of love. We are joining in this vastness of consciousness of the energy of love. So enjoy for today and tomorrow and tomorrow. Have fun.
Thank you. So, where to begin? So we were getting guided by our guide teams just to start out. And Addison, let me ask you, I don't know if you do any light language, but if you do and you're wanting to do that, you're welcome to. But if you're like, that's all right.
I used to. When it comes to kind of like otherworldly channeling, I just channel Metatron. But I love light language, and I appreciate all three of you and being in the presence of you, and also the presence of the light language, which is very beautiful. But it's good to be here in your powerful energies.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I think it was the end of last year that we were all getting kind of that guidance of we should go on a trip to Ireland. And so as we were planning the trip to Ireland, it kind of expanded beyond that. And then we ended up, kind of saying, you know what, we should try to do Scotland too. I mean, it's like right there, and kind of feeling that calling of like going and doing land work, connecting the grids, doing our own ancestral clearing while we were there. And just kind of seeing like what our experiences were going to be, as well as the excitement of, travel, something new, and getting together with, with our own energies and kind of like let's go on this trip. So, so that's where it all started. And then once we, you know, kind of had our itinerary together, then we were like, all right, we're going to start in Edinburgh. I always say it wrong. So however you say it. So somebody from Scotland, you fix me up. But so we started out there. So we flew the night prior, and then the next morning we got there. And then once we got checked in, then we ended up going to Edinburgh Castle. And then we were like, kind of like I want to say like hiking, because where our hotel was like in a lower level, and then we had to like all these stairs we kind of had to go up to get up to the castle. And so we were kind of like, you know, left and right a little bit through town, trying to not really figure out where to go, but we're like, oh, well, let's, you know, grab some lunch first and then we'll go. And, you know, had our tickets and stuff already bought. And then we ended up going to the castle. But while we were there, it was kind of like, we were feeling tired. we were feeling, you know, the energies of, you know, just being in this new place, and kind of getting like zapped in our feet. And then, you know, and then once we got up there, we ended up kind of like going, like spreading out, like everybody was kind of like looking at different things. My husband, Bob, went on the trip with us too. And then after a while, he's like, oh, you'll just fine. I'll be sitting over here. And then when I was looking, because they had, I think it was travel information, but they had this little book of like traveling through Edinburgh Castle. And then I was like looking through it, and it kind of had a map, and I was like checking out the map of like what's where, you know. And as I was looking through the information, he seemed to be like sitting on some kind of an old well. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. And then Joan and I went and did a little more exploring, and we went and saw, you know, the jewels that were, you know, there and on site, and kind of checking it out. And just as we're walking through, you know, we noticed different areas and just kind of feeling different energies. They have the cannons that shoot off there. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but they have like their 1 o'clock. We didn't get there in time for that, so that didn't happen. But everybody was like, oh yeah, you want to get there at 1 o'clock because they still shoot a cannon off. So, but I feel like we were like picking up, like and clearing out energies, kind of like transmuting. So since a lot of what I will do is I will transmute energies physically through my body, I'm like that, take the low, bring it to the high, take the high, bring it to the low, and kind of make that connection. And so during my whole trip, what, you know, one thing that I was physically experiencing was this, like literally the shaking. I was talking to you about it a little bit earlier, about like physically like waking up, shaking, like my whole body would be shaking. And I was like, what is happening with this? But it was a very real thing. And I was having that maybe 2 weeks prior to the trip. And we were definitely in the energy of the solstice. And those energies come in a lot of times for me, like I'll get them strong a few weeks before it's actually like the day of, and then I get them afterwards, kind of like as it like kind of drains out and goes through the system. But a lot of times I connect in with collective energy, so it's not just my own energies that I'm working with. And I don't really have to think about it necessarily. But another fun thing that we were doing was, you know, we had some seed crystals, which Susan had got and shared with each of us. And then we were like making like donations everywhere we went to kind of like, you know, help support the grid with our energy and the crystals, and, you know, making donations to, you know, the gnomes and the elemental beings and the leprechauns, and, you know, working to connect with them. And then we had some interesting experiences as we went through. But is there anything you guys want to say, Joan or Susan, about like while we were out at the castle?
Well, I know when you and Joan went and saw the crown jewels, you know, I hung out with Wendy's husband, Bob, and yeah, I didn't get so much the zapping there as later on at like Rosalind Chapel, but I do remember back in 2020, I think it was in the fall, that I had that dream about Ireland and about Wendy and I going there. And I think that was one of the initial impetuses of going to Ireland was that dream, or when we started talking about it, and then but then we got further guidance about going, since then. But I had a dream where a lucid dream of flying over green hills, and I saw like the side of a cliff, kind of like the cliffs we saw in Northern Ireland. But it was, I just saw like a cliff face, and carved into the cliff face were what looked like Egyptian gods and goddesses, and including a ram-headed god, which I think was related to Khnum, the ram-headed god, Egyptian god that I channeled later. But it was kind of before I had taken one channeling class, but I really wasn't channeling yet. I was just doing it more by myself, writing it kind of, I call it semi-automatic writing, for about a year. And then about a year later, I took a second channeling class, and that's when I started, people asking questions and answering in the moment, and doing more live channeling. We started our global channeling practice group, and things have just evolved from there. But yeah, so that first dream was like, I saw Wendy and I arriving by helicopter to like a 5-star like conference center, and like we were the guests of honor. And it was kind of, and we were later told by another channel, like it was a vision of what we could eventually be, with our spiritually based businesses. And, and I know Wendy's been called to do, to set up events, like her, event in Mount Shasta, Lemurian Call to Action. And then, yeah, with our like channeling, and my business has evolved since then. So, yeah, so I mean, I remember that as kind of putting that seed of like going to Ireland, at least in my head. But then I'm sure you've gotten your own guidance along the way too, and we've had discussions and channeled messages that kind of led us further along that path. So yeah, as far as yeah, Edinburgh Castle, I guess I didn't have any unusual experiences, and that was our first day in Scotland, and it was more when we went to Rosslyn Chapel later in the week that I was getting zapped, in my right foot, like 13 times or 14 times, and it was painful. And we were all connecting in the basement of Rosslyn Chapel, and our whole group, held hands, and we were doing light language and connecting our energies and doing clearing. And you can speak to like what you felt about trying to, felt like we were getting pulled apart a little bit down there, and because the energy was really powerful, our collective connection. And but yeah, so, and yeah, that was an amazing experience being there.
Yeah, it really was. Joan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Sure. Well, the first thing when we went to that castle, I feeling the energy already, that my whole body was like, you can feel the static on my energy. And so I call on, the all the beings, the angels, to kind of start clearing, and connecting to the group, to kind of start clearing the souls that left out, because I can feel the emotions that some of them are, kind of hanging around in that area. So, and then I feel more on the heart. So that's why I said, oh, maybe I have to start, doing the violet flame, because I've been guided to anchor the violet flame to, in any, part of the world with the group. So I start doing that, and I feel the emotions in there, and just gonna, oh, okay. That's why Wendy, when I was holding her hand, I don't know, I feel like I feel like it's because I need more energy. So let me hold your hand. So we can do this together. Well, I just don't want them to be, freaking out because of that, the emotions I'm getting, but I'm trying to be more joyful. So now I got more to get. And so I don't know.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
well, yeah.
We did end up like holding each other's hands a lot in the various locations. We would just be walking, all of a sudden we would just be like reach out and hold hands and or hug on each other, and it was like like you didn't think about it, like you just did it. It just wasn't conscious about it, so you just knew what to do. But anytime you have a question, just kind of like be like, hey, question. Or pop in with a remark. I mean, I don't know, have you traveled over there or have like plans? Addison?
Oh yeah, I'm very familiar with the UK. I have blood ancestral links to Scotland and England primarily, and past life stuff there quite extensively, actually. So I'm very familiar with Edinburgh Castle. I love it setting up on top of the rocks there. Made it very, very hard for people to climb those rocks to break in back in the, 1600s and, around that time. And so, yeah, I love Scotland, Ireland, England, Wales, very near and dear to my heart. My last name is Ames. So on my dad's side of the family, I'm primarily Germanic and French and English, which really England is mostly Germanic. And so there is a wonderful town where Stonehenge is called Amesbury, and that's where Stonehenge is, Amesbury, England. And that's where my dad's side of the family is from, Amesbury, England. And then my mom's side of the family is Scottish, and they're all from Edinburgh and kind of around that area there. So I love it. And for those watching, I didn't go on this trip, but I'm dear friends with Wendy and with Joan. I just met Susan, but I watched their trip on Facebook, and so I feel like I was there, and loved everything that you guys did. It looked like it was a great trip. Thanks for letting me in on it.
Oh, of course. I know, right?
Sure.
Come ride the wave with us. Come ride the wave with us.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But you said something interesting about Stonehenge, and I mean, I keep thinking like down the road that would be like I feel like it's on my bucket list, right, of places to go. So maybe you'll have to like get with your family connections.
Sure. Yeah.
And we'll make a trip.
Yeah, it's
like,
not that
pick a
far
group,
from
and that'd be
London.
fun.
They call it the Salisbury Plain. So Amesbury, Avebury, there's lots of stone circles around that region, really fantastic energies there. So yeah, we can all climb in the back of the station wagon and go.
Right? Go do a road trip.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as I'm in the front seat or facing forward, I can't do the backward seat thing.
Yeah.
Too much crazy motion sickness goes on with me. But but the next thing we ended up doing after that is we ended up going to we took a day trip on a coach bus, and we kind of did like a group trip, and it was pretty much all day. So we drove up to Inverness and stopped at multiple places along the route, and took photos and had some whiskey ice cream, which unfortunately didn't have any whiskey in it. It was just flavored. But
Oh, I
like,
didn't know that. I mean, it was like the best tasting ice cream I've ever had. It was so good.
Delicious.
Yes.
It was delicious. But then once we got up to Loch Ness, and we were at the water's edge, we took a boat trip over to the island where it's Castle Urquhart. I think I'm saying that again.
Yeah, Urquhart. URQUADT.
DT, Urquhart. But
Urquhart, yeah.
But it's it's the ruins of whatever castle that was there, and it was very extensive. But we felt a lot of energy on the boat ride. Over on the water, we were laughing, and then they had like beverages on board, so we got coffee, and well, for those that drink coffee. And then once we got there, we ended up going to the island. And then we like to do gifting, because after we connected with the gnomes, and the leprechauns said that they like this too, but I think the trees, and I don't know, maybe all beings, but they like the energy of apples. And so we ended up like bringing apples like almost everywhere we went, and we were donating, along with these crystals, we were donating apples. So once we got there, we went to the water's edge, and I was like, I need to get my feet in the water. So I started, it was very rocky, and I was like taking my shoes off, and I'm like getting into the water, and
So is this one of the locks you're talking about?
Yeah.
Loch Ness, yeah.
Oh, Loch Ness.
So
Oh, cool.
we took a boat ride over across Loch Ness a ways to this castle, and then we toured the ruins of the castle and got to go in the ruins and with lots of information about it, and that was super interesting. But yeah, once we arrived, there was kind of like a rocky shore, and Wendy and Joan dipped their feet in the water and were gifted an apple, and we all gave our energy to the apple and left it under some trees at the shore. But it was, it was beautiful.
And then Joan, afterwards, when the next day when we met our friends, she was showing, I think she has to talk in order to actually see the skull, so she'll have to come off sound, but then when we went and did that, so I was like, ow, because
at Roslyn Chapel.
Yeah. Before Roslyn Chapel, but so before I'll get to Roslyn for the next day. But
Okay.
while we were still there, like with our feet in the water, I mean, the rocks were very pokey. so yeah, it was kind of like step gingerly, but I was like determined. So
did you bring your water shoes? Did you guys have your water shoes on? I can't remember.
Bring them there? No.
That was the whole purpose. Bring them on the trip was for Loch Ness. But
I brought them, and then never put them on. I don't know. It just didn't make sense.
This is Lady Loch Ness.
Oh, we would have had to carry them on the tour. It was like a day tour to the Scottish Highlands. Yeah.
Her skull, she got that the next day.
This is Lady Loch Ness.
But she told me her name is Laura, and so I'm like, I think it's Lady Laura Loch Ness, Lady Laura in quotes. But she likes being called, I guess.
I dream of her already right away when I slept for
you got her.
Loch Ness when she's talking to me in my dream. I said, okay. Maybe
I mean, it's interesting how our crystals connect with us, and some people may not necessarily relate to the crystal skulls, but the crystal skulls is like a whole thing, right? So there's plenty of information out on YouTube. I've got some information on my channel, Archangel Raziel. No, actually, I think it's Wendy. It used to be Archangel Raziel. It's now Wendy Napolitano Quantum Healer is the current name, but my immediate higher self is Archangel Raziel, which you'll see it on my name. But when I first started my healing journey, they told me, and I say they, but my guide team and maybe my own higher self, while I was under hypnosis, that I was a healer, that they were, clearing my crystalline and activating my crystalline DNA, and that I would be working with crystal skulls. And that, I was a healer, and then they would be supporting me on my journey and protecting me from the masses. And at the time, I was just kind of like, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I've never been in, I like skulls on like jewelry and clothing and, rings and stuff like that. But I was never like looking for crystal skulls ever until that moment. And that was back in 2018, after I had 2 surgeries. And so I was like, okay, there's got to be more healing that is available than what I know of. So then I was already listening to like different healers and channelers and, learning about quantum healing hypnosis technique. And that's when I went to a practitioner near me. And so yada, yada, right? So that's how I came to that journey. But then as I was starting to connect with Susan and Joan, then all of a sudden they realized that they also were called to be guardians of skulls. So if you're really connecting with the crystal, with the energy of the crystal, the being of, the crystal, some people talk to their crystals, even if it's just like a little, whether it's a quartz or labradorite or, whatever it has to be, smoky quartz or anyway. So we ended up connecting with those crystals the following day. So after our trip up to Loch Ness and checking out the castle, and then we took the coach ride back, we stopped at one of the glens, and there was a lot of energy work there. So we were doing like a lot of like sitting and grounding and, getting together and like hugging each other for photos. But Susan, what were you going to say?
You're talking about on the way back from the Scottish Highlands. Yeah, it's the area is called Glencoe, Glencoe. And it's these beautiful green mountains basically with the locks or lakes in between. And so we stopped at it was like Fort something, I can't remember, but it was like a scenic overlook area. And so we took pictures there, the bus stop there, and then we stopped at another like scenic overlook along that way. But you're driving through these huge, beautiful green mountains with, cliffs like what you'd picture in like what you've seen of the Scottish Highlands, where it's green hills, but then there's interspersed cliffs, and kind of like my dream of Ireland. I mean, it could have been related to that too, but because they both kind of have this similar topography in some ways. But it was stunning. It was beautiful, and it was just a day bus tour of the Scottish Highlands and Loch Ness, and it was amazing. Yeah,
and it's interesting that you said that, because I know I was texting, because I'm always texting you guys like, oh, I had this very interesting dream, and I get very detailed dreams. And in this dream that I had prior to the trip, I was like on this path, and it was like up a mountain. And as I was going up the mountain, like you could see like this scenic view of like the mountain and like the skies above it. And then when we got to that glen, I was like looking, and I was like, this feels like my view. But then also like from my dream, but also then when we were in Ireland, there were a couple spots there, and I was like, wait, this kind of feels like my view too. So I don't know I haven't really connected in with like exactly what did I dream, and maybe it was just a hint of things to come. So, that's always a possibility too. So then got back, grabbed, is that the night we couldn't find dinner? Or
no, we
had dinner.
We
had
got
dinner
off
that
the
night.
bus and pretty much walked across the street and had dinner someone had the bus driver, I don't know, recommended this bar restaurant across the street from where we got dropped off when we got back. So it was getting late.
So we ended up eating there. It was late. Well, we didn't realize that almost everything shuts down at 9 o'clock, like kitchen before 9 o'clock. And
both Ireland, Scotland, kitchens closed at 9 o'clock. So but it stays light out till like 10:30 because it's so far north or what, so that's kind of interesting.
So then the third day that we were there, I had at the 2019 Crystal Skull Conference, Jerry McNeil and I had connected and we've like stayed friends over the years, talking, and he's a poet. And so he's often, he's got his own, channel, and, you can access his information, listen to his poetry, but he does a lot of, Scottish poems. And
HighlandMystic.com, right?
So so Highland Mystic will always give him poems. So then when we met,
and
at
that's
Roslyn,
his crystal skull.
Yes,
it's named Highland Mystic.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. And so and he was a speaker at the conference the first year I met him, but but then it's funny because at that conference I told him, all right, well, when I come out to Scotland, I'm going to come visit you. So, and it worked out that way, only he had to kind of meet up with us while we came out to Scotland. So, and that worked out beautifully. But also our friends, Phil Barrow and Sophie, they both came out to say hello to us. And so
from
we
the
had
UK.
Like this,
they drove like 4 hours, north from the UK to meet us at Roslyn Chapel outside of Edinburgh.
I don't like how we say it, but then when we all got together, we were just kind of like, we got like a private reading from, well, a poet session, I should say, a private, poetry reading from Jerry. So he shared a couple of poems with us that were just amazing.
Like he had just written them too, like the day before, the day of, or something, and it was just amazing.
Yeah. And then we we were like, we had like our sound, we all had like sound healing. We brought our crystals with us. And so, I had like this pan flute that I was dragging around with me everywhere, and I kept playing it everywhere we went. And I don't think I got any video of that, but it's hard to pick up those sounds like without like having like a whole microphone setting or whatever set up. But but we ended up going and setting our crystals out and that. And then I noticed that there was like somebody saw like there's some markings in the actual building. And so it was like, oh, put your hand here, and like you feel the vibration of it. And I put my hand there, and I was like, my whole hand just started like shaking. It was like if this is the building, and my hand was like moving like this on the building. I was like, wow, this is like crazy. And so
And that was after we went, down in the basement of Rosalind Chapel, or down in the crypt. It's
we
the
went to the
crypt
crypt.
in the basement of Rosalind Chapel.
I thought I was filling the building in that one spot before we went down.
Oh, you were? I thought it was after we came back.
There was another
out.
part I was filling afterwards.
Yeah, it
and the
almost
energy
looked like a
was
Freemason
changed.
syndrome or a symbol.
Yeah.
Whereas like this and then like an arc crossing, kind of like the frame of a letter A, but then like an arc.
The compass.
Yeah, it looked like a Freemasonry type symbol.
Yeah.
The compass. Yeah.
But yeah, I think I put my hand on that spot too, and yeah, I could feel some energy there.
Yeah, so we put our crystals out, and of course donating our crystals, and then we decided to go into the basement of the chapel, which
it was the crypt.
But it had like almost like how churches have like the stained glass windows and that in there.
Yeah, there was a big stained glass window, so a big arch for that. So and then it had that separate room that
like
was at the original crypt, and then it had like little alcoves carved into the walls, and so we were putting seed crystals along the whole perimeter of the room. And then we all joined hands and did our blessings and light language and everything.
And so while we're holding hands, I kept feeling like this energy pulling, like trying to pull us apart. And I was like, what is that energy? But at the same time, I felt like our energy, like expanding, like I was feeling the light expanding.
Yeah, like we were expanding our energy out. And yeah, something was maybe trying to pull us apart from doing that.
Yeah. And then
but I was getting, those painful zaps in the right arch of my foot, like 13, 14, 15 times, like stab. And then, it wasn't until we went outside and kind of did some grounding and stuff that pain in my feet kind of cleared. And then in another occasion, like it was in the arch of my left foot, like the stabbing. So something about, releasing energy or bringing energy in from Gaia. I'm not sure, but.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Joan, what were you saying? And then
Phil got attacked.
Yeah.
And that, because we were doing too much. I mean, we were too powerful. And then,
you could feel the power of the energy, all of us together. It was like incredible.
It was too powerful.
So after we got done, and then we went upstairs, and then we were kind of sitting in an area and just like having a
on the grass under the trees. Yeah.
But even before that, Phil, Jerry, and I were in the corner and kind of sitting on this like one lifted area. And then while we were sitting there, somebody from the place came in, and she goes, I don't know if you know this, but I think you're sitting on like somebody's grave, like that's a crypt. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like I didn't realize. I mean, we might have, my bad. But it was also said that was Merlin's, like that's supposedly where Merlin, however you say his name, but that's like the location where his final resting place was. And Jerry, Phil, and I all have like a connection with Merlin. And so there was like, we were like, oh, are you surprised that all of us ended up like spontaneously in this corner, like not knowing like why we're drawn there? So that was interesting. But then as we got outside and we were grounding and just kind of like having chat conversation and just, trying to make plans for lunch, that sort of thing. Phil goes like this, he like looks at his arm and he's like, what is this? And it may have been his other arm, but he goes, and then he's like looking at his hand, he goes, yeah, when I got here, he goes, I didn't have any scratches on me. And so he was scratched on the top of his hand. And then you can actually see like somebody's like finger marks, like down about, I don't know, 3.5, 4 inches down his
big
wrist.
Red scratch.
Mm-hmm. And I think I posted photos of that on my Facebook page. which is Wendy Napolitano, but that was interesting. And I said, oh, you know what, that's interesting that you say that, because I was feeling that being pulled energy. And then we ended up making our plans to go and have lunch, and then we were just having such a good time. We were supposed to go to like the Glen and another location, like 2 other locations, but we were just like enjoying each other's company too much.
Yeah, we were
having
just sitting
lunch.
at the restaurant chatting and having a good time.
So yeah, so then we were like, well, that's okay. Like it's what it's supposed to be. And then Jerry, who had some, because he does, conferences and stuff, he had like extra crystals, and he was like, hey,
Or
I have
crystal
these
skulls he was
crystal
selling.
skulls, both, right? And he's like, if you guys are interested, and we were like, yeah, like show us what you got, because sometimes they just call to you, right? And then Joan saw that crystal of her Lady Loch Ness, and as soon as she saw it, there were a couple others out, and I was like, yeah, I want them all. Like they all were like, yeah, me. And I was like, I can't like take all of y'all. I can't, like, I need to, like, I can't listen to you all. But then that citron skull, as soon as he set that out, like she's looking at it, like going, oh, let me look at that. And she's looking at it, Joan is, and then I see it, and I literally, my hand just like zapped out, like, whoosh, and I snatched it up, and I like brought it to me, and I was like,
Opening it for me.
I totally like took it out. Like she's looking, she's like, are you kidding me? She's like looking at me. What'd you say, Joan?
Jerry was opening it for me, and he's setting it. I said, oh my goodness, take it.
I just took it.
And then he sets it down, you just grab it.
Just grab it.
He's opening it for her. She's looking at it, waiting patiently. He sets it down, and I nab it. So I'm holding it in my hand, and then I looked at it, and I looked at Joan, and I was like, oh, like she's connected with me, but it's Joan's skull. And so I was very sad about it, but I set it back down. I feel like it's interesting that we've really come here with the idea to escape who we are. And so we've created all these different lives of experiences of, whether they're holographic or whatever. And then of course we play the game of the
Concurrent
timeline,
lifetimes,
right?
parallel.
So, there's always the concurrent, the parallel, and then there's always like the oneness. Like we know and are aware of it, but we're having so much fun playing the game that we continue to play it. So that's, we might be being called more and more to connecting in with the oneness, but we're still kind of waiting on the collective even to catch up with us, because even some of our stuff that we're talking about here is on the far out mode. And we ended up traveling the next day, and we went to, fly into Dublin. And then from Dublin, we took the drive up to Belfast. Now, my husband's never driven on the opposite side of the road and the opposite side of the car.
Yes.
But he was, gracious enough to, trust himself, and he did it.
He did a great job. He caught on. Yeah.
It didn't take him long. And the only thing is, like, they were warning us, like, okay, like, are you familiar with roundabouts? And we're like, yeah, we have roundabouts out by us that, like, we are familiar with them, so it's not a problem. But again, opposite sides and everything. So anyway,
you just follow traffic for the most part. Yeah, except in the bigger cities, gets maybe a little more confusing.
He missed a few turns, and we, kind of zipped around. But I was like, I feel like sometimes the fairies and leprechauns are playing with us to have us like go to different areas than we're supposed to be or weren't like expected to, so that we are working those energies too.
Well, he surprised us. Like he had in his head,
he had an agenda,
different places to go, and didn't tell us, and just brought us to Newgreen, or we went to this castle in Dublin called Swords Castle, and then we went to Newgrange. But because we didn't have a reservation to take the tour, and it was kind of later afternoon, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we missed taking the tour of Newgrange. So we couldn't actually go in Newgrange, but we were still
there
outside of it and took pictures of it. But then we went to those other ancient burial sites, those passage tombs, as they're called. So we went to some nearby that you could it was just like a farmer's field, and it had the mounds there, because I don't know if they were not fully excavated yet, but we climbed the mounds, and they did have some the stones where you could kind of peek into the passage tombs a little bit, and those were called Dowth, D-O-W-T-H, I think is more the American pronunciation, D-O-W-T-H, and And so there was some information, there's some plaques about the passage tombs, and we walked around them and walked on top of them and took great like perimeter views of the green rolling hills that were gorgeous in Ireland. But yeah, we kind of just that first day on the way to Belfast, we just stopped, and then we stopped at another town and had tea and little tea sandwiches, and then we went through the countryside, where all the sheep and just kind of went out in the countryside. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, it's
Cool.
nice having that we had our own rental car. We could just kind of off-road and explore, and yeah, so that first day was a lot of fun. All
Cool.
the different places we stopped along the way. Yeah.
Were the people nicer, do you think, in Ireland or in Scotland? Or did you see, or were
I
they
think
the
they were
same?
both nice. It was a different vibe. I guess Scotland, like we went out dancing, and it was just like a fun, youthful, almost like a college town vibe. So we went, us three girls, not Bob, but we after dinner he went back to the hotel, but we just walked down the street, and there was all these like bars and dance clubs, and more like 20 somethings. And so we so we checked those out, did some dancing, and they were playing all this like American 80s and 90s music that was like
It was crazy.
fantastic. It was
They're
like the
singing the
best
songs with
music.
them.
Yeah, I'm just like, I haven't heard these songs in years, or since back when we were younger and we used to dance to that music, back then, at the dance clubs. But I hadn't been out dancing like that at a dance club. And it was super fun. We had a great time.
Cool.
It just kicking our heels up, and
Oh, here's
it was
something that's
great.
funny was the one club that we ended up at was called the Three Sisters.
And we're three soul sisters. So yeah.
Synchronicities? Huh, I wonder.
Very cool. Sounds like a blast.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then we ended up driving up to Belfast after we had done all of those trips in the different stops. And of course we were walking around, sitting in different spots, connecting in, I ended up walking the perimeter of the mound, and then went up to the top of the one mound, hugging on a big tree, one location, the one that we didn't get into. And then we were just like it felt like we were like on these random stops along the road, and and then just kind of got all the way up to Belfast, did the whole, get something to eat, get checked into the hotel. And then the next day we went to the Titanic, or was it that same day? Went to the Titanic Museum. And
that was the next day.
That was the next day, because I was like, we're going to be tired from travel. We didn't get much sleep or whatever. So I figured we kind of needed like kind of a down day, but we had fun all day. But then when we went to the Titanic Museum, so I don't know, we were talking about not going for something, and all of a sudden I was like, no, we need to go. I didn't really mean to feel that way, but I did feel that way. And I was like, okay, what is that about? And so we got into the museum, and, just really like looking at all the different displays and everything that they had. And then they had like a ride that they talked about the building of the Titanic, and then you could still see where they launched it, like out in the bay next to where the museum is. And as we were like kind of getting to the end, they have like a wall of all the names, and it's kind of, like, I don't know if they like made a display or whatever. So it almost looked like you could like look through the floor, like you were seeing like the passing, and there was like music, kind of somber music playing, and like you could see like what was recovered from the Titanic. So again, I don't know if it was like put there or if it was actual stuff or whatever. But anyway, toward the end of the museum, as you're getting ready to leave, kind of takes a nice somber, reflective moment. And so as we were leaving to go like out, it kind of had like, after that Titanic, like this was changed in maritime law, this was changed in maritime law, so they had like all these different like things of like how this affected like the world, and how it made like the boating industry change when it came to like passengers, and making sure that you were doing drills and that sort of thing.
Lifeboats.
And they could have had so much more people, but because they didn't know what they were doing, that some boats were launched with like, I mean, just like the movie, right? launched with less people, and some of them were just like set, free with like nobody on them kind of thing happened. And but anyhow,
Yeah, there's
so
no
we got to,
protocol or training in a case of emergency.
yeah, but we got to one of the signs that talked about it. It was like the exchange from like the one guy that was doing the telegrams. And so it was like the exchange of one to the
The
other.
distress
And
call conversation.
and that after the lookout, so the guy that had the lookout and the binoculars, the one prior to him took the binoculars with him. So the new guy came on, was only going by sight, reading that. And then all of a sudden, something about like that distress or like not being able to help or hear, I don't know, something like I like felt this sensation about it.
Like
and all
the
of a sudden
nearby ships that were like, well, where are you located, that who can arrive first to help?
Right. Like not
Yeah.
getting the call or not being able to like, or anyway, I felt some kind of way. And all of a sudden I just started bawling, and I was like, what is happening to me right now? So I got the sensation that I had some kind of a past life tied into the distress and the ability to react or to send out that distress signal or the distress call, or being able to respond to the call. So what, who or what, I was involved with, I don't know. I just know that I was clearing and there was a lot of tears going on. But Joan, you had, and I can't remember if it was in Ireland, but you had some kind of a reaction like that too, where all of a sudden you were just like, we were driving past somewhere and all of a sudden you just got very emotional. And I kind of remember seeing you and I was like, okay, she needs a moment.
Oh, that area too. I had a clearing the kids for being a poor working on that ship.
Oh, those poor, on the ship?
Yeah, because it was,
yeah.
they weren't paid very much, and being,
yes,
yeah,
7 years
definitely the working
old,
class.
well, I think 12 years old, like that, those kids are working on, the ship.
Building it, right? Are you
do
talking about the
labor.
building part?
And
They
the
were working on
Titanic,
the still?
yeah, when they're working on that. And they're eating some kind of potatoes. That's it. So that's why I said, oh my God. When I just saw that picture, and then I said, I felt the emotions right there and said, oh my God, I feel like that I'm gonna cry,
Well,
but I
before
have
they
to
had
hold
child
it.
labor laws, I
The
don't know
labor,
when
yeah.
Ireland started having child labor laws like we did in the United States, but
Yeah, so that was interesting. And then just skipping forward. So now we're traveling and we're stopping to the next spot, and now we're going to Londonderry, Londonderry. And as we get there, the goal is to hit the next day, right? We're going to the Giant's Causeway, and then after the Giant's Causeway, then we go to Carrick Every Bridge. And, that's a rope bridge that's just like ropes and planks. That's about 100-something feet over, the ocean and rocks and, the waves below. And there used to be like a fisherman's house that was there. So they used to actually fish from that location. It was like,
well, going back, yeah, like
did.
300 years, they used to cross a more flimsy version of that rope bridge to catch salmon and other fish, and just had like one rope handrail and it was pretty. So the one they have, the modern day one, is kind of representative of what the fishermen did crossing that same area for like 300 years. So but it's a safe one. I mean, they have people that work there at that site that make sure people are safe crossing it, and they do checks on the bridge. But that was one of my favorites, I think.
Yeah, the bridge was my favorite too.
Yeah.
And I think so the Giant's Causeway was cool, but dude, it was like the middle of the afternoon, and
it was like 80 plus degrees, and we were just dying in the heat, in the sun.
To get back, because you had to like schedule everything with your tickets, and we had a time that we had to meet to like drive still up the coast to get to the bridge. And so
we had reservations for each.
And so the causeway
like
was
1
cool. We spent a lot
o'clock
of
and
time,
4
but then
o'clock
we
or
walked
something.
up in the heat of the day, back up that road. Now they had a coach
And there was
bus
no
or-
shade.
yeah, no
Yeah.
shade whatsoever. But they did have a bus that would like ride you back up, but their queue, or in America as we call them, the line, was like 3 buses long. And we're like, yeah, we
We're
don't
not
have
going to
time to do
wait.
that.
We
Like,
don't have
let's
time.
just
Yeah. Half
walk
an
back
hour,
up there.
hour to wait. Yeah. Or longer.
So yeah, so but you know, we sat around and took some photos. Of course, you had to get your photos. And but I don't know, were you feeling anything? I was just feeling connected to the sea and the earth and the rocks. I was just feeling really connected to the rocks when I was there.
Yeah.
I
The
kept
rocks
like
were really
putting my
cool.
hands on the rocks and sitting
Yeah.
on the rocks. And of course, there's volcanic energy that they say created the causeways. So, you know, you can, of course, read up on that and how it was like crunched in between. And they have a lot of them have octagonal shapes, the way that, you know, the way that it's stacked up and built. But then the Kirker Bridge, after we got there and went across the bridge, like there was like this island, like I didn't even go to the other side. Literally, like we hit this grassy patch and I just like took my shoes off and laid down. Like it was the weirdest thing.
Well,
Like-
directly underneath the bridge is actually a dormant volcano from like millions of years ago or whatever that created, yeah, this little island that juts out into the sea that
Oh, yeah,
we
no
cross
clue.
from the from the mainland to this little island. But yeah, and there's just grass, a little grassy patch that you could lay down and enjoy the view and relax, and before you had to hike all the way back, but because it was a little
Now,
bit of a walk to get there, but it was a
Addison,
beautiful scenery. Yeah.
have you seen images and stuff of it aside from like us like posting photos and stuff, or have you
Yeah.
like?
So I've never actually been to Ireland, but I have lots of family that have gone there. So I've heard stories, I've studied up on it, and I saw your photos for sure. So I love it. I mean, generally, I just say it looks also green. It seems like every photo I see, it's verdant, you know, like emerald green, and
Yeah.
and really beautiful. So I really appreciate Ireland and the Irish people. They've been
Yeah.
through a
Yeah, the
lot.
northern coast. I mean, there's some other sites along the northern coast I'd love to go back and check those out. But all along that northern coast, just the cliffs are just incredible. The water is this like aqua you know, like bluish green. Yeah, it's just stunning. And yeah, the grass, like all the
Oh.
the shorter green grass has like these little like daisies and little yellow flowers. So it's like little miniature daisies and these little yellow flowers that are dotted across the grass, just like in people's lawns and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool. And
Beautiful.
there was no bugs except for black flies, like not even gnats, or I didn't even see a bee or anything. It was just black flies. So you could open your windows, no wood ticks, no
Cool.
mosquitoes, no nothing like we have here in the Midwest. But yeah, so I really enjoyed that. Like you could walk through the tall grass and not worry about wood ticks or anything like that. It was fantastic. Or not have to put bug
Yeah.
spray on or
And then while we were there, we stayed in one of the original Irish hotels. So it's like a historical hotel.
yeah, it's called the
And
Brown Trout
Brown
Country
Trout Country Inn.
or
Mhm.
Golf and Country Inn.
Oh, wow.
And they had their own
So-
restaurant and bar and then we stayed in a traditional Irish
Golf, it's
cottage.
the Brown Trout Golf and Country Inn.
Yeah.
And they had like such a cute cottage that it was
Yeah.
like literally like a family room, a
Traditional
living
style.
room, kitchen, you know, everything was like really amazing about it. And the rooms were like 2 rooms like off to either side. And the rooms each had their
The
own, you know, two
bathroom.
2 beds, their own bathroom and shower. And then like a little outside patio that you could like sit at. The
Dining
owner
room.
is the daughter of the family that owned the farm. So she's like, so the farm was converted into like this golf course and that. So, you know, they showed like there's a
Into
lot
a
of photos
resort.
and stuff on the wall. Yeah, that have like this used to be where the cows were milked, you know, and
neat.
that sort of thing. And that she's like, yeah, my dad's the one that built those cottages. I'm like, oh my God, they were amazing. So totally would go there again. We thought that probably, I mean,
We only
you
were
know,
there for one night and we're all
we
like,
wish we had
were
stayed
there
there
for
more days.
multiple nights. Yeah,
Aw.
because it was so beautiful, this cottage, and amazing. It backed up to the golf course and you could just leave the windows open at night and have the breeze come in. It was just, yeah, it was
Yeah.
like heaven. It was awesome.
And then en route,
Okay.
so that was, then we ended up going down to Donegal. And then while we were in Donegal, we ended up at the, the Donegal Castle, and more experiences there with clearing and all that. But then after Donegal, I don't know if you guys want to add anything, but I was going to hop forward from Donegal, hopping over to going to Dublin. And then when we were in Dublin, we all had like something happened to us in Dublin. So that was kind of like,
we stopped at Hill of Tara.
yeah, we stopped at the Hill of Tara,
Another passage tomb on the way to Dublin. Yeah.
And went up there and walked, and they have all this information about how they used to do ceremonies up there, and then they have
For the Irish
Mound of
Kings.
Hostages. So yeah, I don't really know the whole story behind that. So maybe it's tragic. I don't know, because if it's
I thought
Mound of
they
Hostages,
did the ceremonies to like crown the Irish kings too.
They did.
There.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they have like maps and stuff of like what that area was like. But we went out and we were doing, some light language there, and then sitting on top of the mound, we were, doing some meditation up there and just connecting.
And didn't we donate apples and seed crystals to the nature beings
we
there?
pretty much did that our whole trip.
That's great.
So we were at Dublin, we were checked in the hotel, and we had made arrangements to go to Dublin Castle, and which was the parliamentary building or whatever. But so anyway, so we had breakfast and we had time in between because it wasn't going to be up till about 1:30. And I'm like, well, I'm exhausted. Like I keep waking up with like these energy shakes and vibrations, and I'm like, I could really use a nap. So I'm like, let's just take some time. You girls do what you want to do.
I took a nap too after breakfast.
Yeah. So took a nap. So here's what happens. Bob wakes me up, and he wakes me up and he's like, hey, it's time to go. And I'm like, all right, like, just give me 5 minutes. Like, I'll be like ready to go. I just kind of have to put some eye drops in my eyes and freshen up. So I go out and look to the window, and it's like pouring rain. And I was like, oh, wow, like it is really raining out here. And I'm looking out, and I was like, well, I guess I've been dragging along my raincoat and an umbrella this whole trip, haven't had to use it. So now I'm going to get to use it. So then I go in, I'm standing in the hallway in this room that we're standing, this little room. It's like a hallway, the room, the window, the bathroom. That's like, it's like probably the smallest out of all the places we stayed, because, right in downtown Dublin. But anyway, I'm like standing there like in the hallway, and he goes, and he's in the bathroom, and I go, hey, what are you doing? I go, aren't you ready to go? And he's standing in a towel, and I'm like, well, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm going to take a quick shower. I go, take a shower. And I kind of push him on his back a little bit. I'm like, fine, take your shower. And so then I'm kind of like, well, now what? And so then I went back to the window, and I'm like looking out, and I was like, well, I guess I need my, my raincoat, my umbrella. And then I am walking back across the bed, like in front of the bed. And then there was a scheduled alarm to go off at 12:30 for the hotel for like a test. And I also had set my alarm to wake up at 12:30 to because it's literally like just a short drive away. And so I was like, I don't have to get up until like 12:30. I'm like, I'll probably just like set my alarm for that. So anyway, so I'm walking in front of the bed, and I'm getting ready to lean down to my suitcase to get my coat and my umbrella. And then the alarm goes off, and I wake up.
It was all a dream.
It was all a dream.
It was a dream. It was so real. And I was like, what? I'm so confused. Like I woke up, and I was like, where am I? I'm so confused. I was just getting my coat and umbrella, and that was a dream. It was so real.
It sounds like a movie.
God, it was so real. It was so real. And I was like, okay, well, I guess Bob didn't jump in the shower. And yeah, so then we end up going to the castle, and then we get there, we get our tickets. After we get our tickets, we go inside the place, and then all of a sudden Susan's story comes.
You want me to tell it?
Yeah, that would be great.
I mean, I'll leave out the gory details. But...
Yeah.
So I was right about to walk up like the velvet stairs, basically, and I felt like some trepidation, like I didn't want to go up these stairs. And then I started getting stomach grumblings. I'm like, oh, so then I quickly go upstairs, tell Wendy and Joan, like, hey, I'll be in the bathroom for a while. So I go back downstairs, go in the bathroom. I was in there for 2 hours with like the worst food poisoning, stomach flu I've ever had in my life. I thought I was going to die, and they thought they'd have to take me to the hospital. And they ran down, they talked to somebody there to like, where's the nearest pharmacy? So they went and got me some stuff to help me out. And so finally, after like 2 hours, after wave of purging, clearing, I kind of feel like it was like an ancestral kind of clearing. I mean, I do have some Irish ancestry. My middle and last name are Irish, but I think I'm only like an eighth Irish though. But I mean, as we were going, around Ireland, I kind of felt like dense energy, like, like we were clearing or maybe gathering it all up. And then because the Dublin Castle was the seat of the Irish government for like 1,000 years, and that's where I had this experience, I kind of feel like it was a big release of energy, or just a release in general. And since being back, I've just felt so much lighter. I mean, just lighter energetically, since that. But I kind of feel like it was, a big clearing. So that happened, and we were to fly back the next day. So my last day in Dublin, I was pretty much in bed for the rest of the day when we got back to the hotel. But it was all fine. I was just resting up, and luckily I was okay to fly back the next day. That was all good. But I pretty much had to take a couple days off of work and just recuperate for like a week after that. But and just sleep. I was just sleeping for probably the 2 weeks after we got back. It was
gosh.
But anyways,
same.
I want to take a step back. I know Joan has her story about the leprechaun, so I'll let her tell that. But back in Belfast, so Joan and I were roommates, right? And so there's one night, I think the second night in Belfast, we got back from dinner, and I was feeling a little sick to the stomach, and Joan and Wendy and Bob went up. There's like a rooftop bar area that they wanted to check out because it's up on the roof or something. And I was, my stomach was acting up. So I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to stay in bed because I'm not feeling good. And so Joan and Wendy come back like around 11:30, and they're hanging out in Joan and my room, and because there's a little table with a couple chairs by the window and stuff, and so then about 12:30, so I had fallen asleep, and then they came in about 11:30, so I woke up, and then I think I fell back asleep about 12:30 while they were over talking on the other side of the room. And then I think I got like just a spam phone call like at 2 in the morning. I don't, from the US or something. And I usually have my ringer off like when I sleep. And I think my phone lit up and woke me up. And so I get up, I'm like, okay, I'll get up and go to the bathroom. And I'm walking by Joan's bed, which is right across from the bathroom. And it looked like her bed was perfectly made, like she hadn't been to bed or slept in her bed. I'm like, it's 2 in the morning. Like, did Wendy and Joan like go down to the lobby and they're hanging out talking down there, not to disturb me? Like I was like, where's Joan, And so I went to the bathroom, went back to sleep, and then the next morning Joan's like, I was sleeping in bed at that time. Like Wendy I think had left by 1 o'clock, and Joan's like, I was in bed. I'm like, I swear I thought the bed looked perfectly made, with the pillows and, like the decorative pillows, like on the bedspread and stuff. And unless I was half asleep, but intuitively I got
totally was there.
I thought that she had gone on ship because she has astral dreams all the time of being on, on ships and stuff. And so I'm like, did they like take her physically on a ship or what's going on? So, or I was in another dimension and didn't see her. I don't know, but it was very odd. So, and then Joan had her own unique experience with the leprechaun, so I'll let her tell that. But
I don't know how to tell the story. But
so,
just what you saw.
Well, the night before we ended up going to dinner without Susan. So jumping back to Dublin, and so we ended up going out to dinner that night. And that's
it was the first. But the first night in Dublin is when
when
Joan's experience happened.
Yeah, and then I'm waking up like early in the morning, and but I'm still laying in bed. I thought I don't know, maybe I'm in
Like 4
trance or
a.m. or
something.
something, or 5 a.m.?
Yeah, it was, yeah, around that, maybe like 5 to, and I was looking at the top of the, on the shelves, and then
Like
okay,
up in the
somebody's lying.
left-hand corner of the room where it's like the shelving unit, and there's extra
Yeah,
blankets and pillows sitting at the top of the shelves. Yeah.
yeah, but the thing is, it's moving, and it's the face. I can see the face. It was like the face. It was like a oblong. It's an
Like a
oblong.
pointed chin, kind of.
Yeah, kinda, and then as a beard, and then they have a hat, so this kind of
Was it sort of a pointy
and
hat?
yeah, somewhat kind of pointy, but not really pointy, like a gnome. No, but it's like it's a little bit square on that, and then
Sort of
short
flopped over,
hat,
like the tip is kind of
flat.
flopped over,
Hmm.
like gnomes
No,
hat.
it's a long one, but it's But
Yeah.
anyway, the I can see the face moving, and so they were just looking at us, watching. And I was in my bedside, and I was just frozen and looking
I
and
slept through
watching
the whole
them. I
thing.
said,
Like I didn't.
yeah, and I I was observing, and the feet and the legs was down. Okay, I was looking if there's something down, or maybe just my imagination or something. And there's a little it's like a no, maybe a little leprechaun next to the guy. I mean, I said, okay, maybe it's four of them moving. What they
Hmm.
doing? I said, okay, are they gonna come and talk to me? So
Wow.
I was just, and then I was just observing. If I'm gonna move, they gonna see me that I'm be watching them. So I said, okay, and then maybe like 5 minutes, I was arguing with myself. I said, is that really real? A leprechaun? Because I don't know if there's a leprechaun. Really, I didn't really know about it, but no, I'm aware of them, but they didn't tell me that there's a leprechaun. So when I saw them, I said, okay, there is a leprechaun. And I can see the legs. I mean, the jeans is like a rainbow. Well, the guy is as a rainbow jeans, like kind of
Or
swirling.
pants.
Yeah, swirling the pants, because when you look around the top, it's only one color. It's only white, a pillow. So I
Oh,
said,
so it
okay,
stood out against the pillow. Yeah, because there's just white pillow sitting on the top shelf, right? And
yeah,
so you
it's
could
only
kind
a
of
pillow.
see the contrasts of them
Hmm.
against the white pillow in the
And
shadows of the
on
room.
the
But
the yeah, and also there's a hanging. The feet is hanging down
yeah,
on the shelves. So I said, okay, so and it's moving. They're moving
yeah,
around.
yeah.
So I said, okay,
Well,
it's a
your third
leprechaun.
eye or clairvoyance must be pretty open. And so I've only seen usually things with my eyes closed, like I'll see visions of things, or I'll see sparks
Mhm.
of colored light with my eyes open, but I haven't seen like a form yet. But you know,
I can't remember,
maybe that.
Addison,
But I
if
did
you
have a
said you get that
dream.
too, like the third eyesight where you'll like see things that other people aren't seeing per se.
But I had a lucid dream where I met two gnomes in my dream, like before this trip, like a month or two before. I met two gnomes appeared in this dream, and they kind of came, and it was like I was driving by and I saw them in this field area that has like a fence that I usually drive by outside of my small town I live in. And there's kind of like a little pathway next to some woods. And so in my dream, I saw this male and female gnome walking on this path. But before I saw them, it's like I had a couple, like a friend of like this couple that were friends of like a friend. They like came to my house and said, hey, we saw these gnomes on our drive to your house, right? And then like the next day, this is all in my dream, like I was driving by that area that they said they saw these gnomes, and I looked over and I saw these two gnomes walking on this path, and the female one seemed to be like helping her husband or whatever walk, like he had some issues. And so I was like on the other side of the street, and I was like waving at the gnomes trying to get their attention, like, hi, and so the female, I think, saw me, and I don't know, somehow with her husband, like kind of bounded across the grass and were like by me in a second. And we went into this 2-story building on my side of the street, and there was like an upper room this just upper rectangular room, like kind of in this office, this empty business or something. And so there's nobody else initially in this room, and the male and female gnome, I like vividly remember like what they look like, kind of what they're dressed in, kind of like handmade type clothing or hand dyed type clothing. She had almost what looked like kind of salt and pepper gray hair, but her eyes were like this gray color, almost that looked like I had a film, almost like glaucoma, but I could tell she was like had her wits about her and, was very spry. And then she was helping to take care of her husband. He kind of seemed to have maybe like memory issues or issues moving, like with a cane or whatever. And that she was kind of helping him, like this older gnome couple anyways. And her name was Helena, his name was Edward. But in this dream, they were telling me that the gnomes and other nature people would be making their presence known to me. Like I would start seeing them and connecting with them more than I already have. I channel them and stuff and do their light language. But yeah, so and then we had this kind of experience or Joan did in our room where they were kind of watching us. And then it was later that day when I had this
she got ill.
food poisoning where I got ill and I was purging all this stuff, right? But there is a leprechaun. So that next day, or maybe it's on the plane home, I read that there is a leprechaun museum in Dublin, which we didn't go to. We could have gone there, but so I don't know if they're kind of helping me through that experience, or maybe they were with us on the whole trip.
Yeah, that's what I got, is that they were with us the whole trip. I mean,
as guardians.
They were prepping us beforehand to, kind of to have that. Now, when I was at the Giant's Causeway, I connected in with an earth dragon, and Jerry, actually, when he had his little crystals, he had a little, or I had prior to that, no, I think it was prior to that, I bought this little green and white dragon. And I hadn't really connected with it, and I thought, I'm going to bring it on the trip. So I had it with me on the trip. And then when I was at the Giant's Causeway, I got this Jade of the Sea, and I was like, okay, how is Jade an Earth Dragon of the Sea? I'm kind of confused. Like, what does that mean? But I guess it's this dragon like supports the area where the land meets the sea. So it's kind of like, which is why I was feeling like so tuned into the Giant's Causeway. But I was going to ask you, because I can't remember. Addison, have you had those like the third eye experiences where you see something, or you're just like, like, what is that?
Oh yeah, all the time. And I enjoy the gnomes. Sometimes I go for walks with the gnomes. They kind of like walk next to me and just like chat with me. But the way I see in different ways. But sometimes like I see physical things, and then there's like an overlay of multidimensionality. And, the gnomes and fairies and all the elementals are kind of like just off from where we are. We can't quite see them in our normal sight, but they're there. So it's almost like if you ever put on 3D glasses, and things kind of come into clarity because of the way that those lenses are kind of framed. So I have to kind of just like kind of refocus, and then I can kind of see them, kind of like outlines. Like, oh, hey guys, how you doing? Fairies too. I see the gnomes more than I see the fairies. Fairies sometimes are a little bit too active for me, a little too loud. So I'm like, guys, no fairy now, thank you, because they want to do stuff. But the gnomes I appreciate. Leprechauns are nice, and yeah, I think Ireland is replete with those guys. So
Yeah.
a
Well,
cool story, Joan. Love what you,
Well,
love what you
and
shared.
since we've been
It was,
back, we in our channeling practice, we channeled the leprechauns too in one of our
Oh,
channeling
cool.
practices.
Oh, go ahead, Joan, and then I have something to say after you.
because I've been dreaming the party for like every day, like 3 days in a row. I've been dreaming a party. I said, well, it will be nice if we're gonna be experiencing in the 3D, right? So that's probably why we have that party in the end.
Yeah, we did have a party in the end, and then they started singing some American old time songs. And so, we already ate, and they were watching them doing like at Murray's Bar. We were watching them because they had like the restaurant and then entertainment. And so they were doing the jig, and then they were also, had their musicians who were, singing some Irish songs. And then toward the very end, they started singing, of all songs, John Denver's Country Roads.
Oh, wow.
And so of course that's a song I grew up with as a kid, and I'm like literally like singing at the top of my lungs.
Great song.
As was most of the bar.
That's one of my favorite songs too. I love that song. I grew up.
So we were laughing about that. But then, like, final note, we're at the airport, and we, finally we got all our stuff, and we're like got our luggage, got the bus, turned the car back in, and we're on our way to the airport, and now we're at the airport, and now we're like inside, and we're kind of like waiting, and I don't know, I think Susan, your flights, because everything got pushed and delayed, like there were flight delays.
Yeah, our flights were like delayed by 2.5 hours. It was
so
supposed to be 11:30, and we didn't leave till like 1:30 or 2. Something like that, yeah.
So Susan was like at the counter. Bob goes over to the counter. Joan and I rather. Now we're kind of like off to the side, like waiting, but we're like having a conversation. So Joan is talking to me, and as she's talking to me, I see that there's like, I want to call it a translucent being in front of her, talking and saying the same thing that she's saying, but I can see this translucent being. Like I can see the outline of it, almost as if it was like a line drawing, but I could see
just inside of,
the energy
in front
of
her
it,
mouth.
just in front of her mouth. Like her mouth was like longer and further away from her own face. And so I'm like, I didn't want to go like, hey, Joan, there's something in front of your face. So I just observed it, and then I shared it with her later. But I was like, I was observing it and trying to go like figuring out like, what am I looking at? Is that a gnome? Or is that a like my first thought was, is that a gnome? And then I was like, is that a leprechaun? Like that was my second thought. And then I stopped thinking thoughts. And then I was just observing, seeing like she's talking, but like the beings talking at the same time. Like the mouth is moving. Both their mouths are moving at the same time. Their chin.
Or was it just maybe mouthing what she was saying? Or maybe it's actually
talking at the same time.
Or she was channeling them while she was speaking, or
no. The being was in front of her talking at the same time. So, so what we found out later when, I don't know if you and I were channeling.
Well, I channeled the
leprechaun.
Well, I channeled the leprechaun, so maybe you were asking.
So here's what I remember, like what came up out of the conversation, and I can't remember if it was Jim or your channeling or whatever when we were asking questions, but she has her own leprechaun aspect. And her aspect was showing me its presence within her as like multidimensional, right? So here it's her, but it's like her in a little like different hologram.
Like an overlay, multidimensional overlay, or like a concurrent lifetime or parallel lifetime or something.
Anyway,
or maybe it's an aspect.
But I could see it as if it was not like it was an opaque energy around her. It was clear, but I could see it. And so that, totally third eye looking at it. And so she was talking, and it was talking at the same time. My hands are pumping at the same time, but it was like in front of her face, both going at the same time, saying the same thing. And I was like, wow, that's really cool.
That's really cool.
Yes,
all this was in the airport?
That was at the airport. Got home and couldn't get enough sleep. I mean, I was like sleeping 4 extra. If I could.
Yeah, the first
2 hours
2 weeks after back, I was sleeping all the time. Yeah, I still feel like I could just sleep all the time with the.
But
The
I've
full-
also
full
noticed
moon we've had,
since
yeah.
we've been back, so I'm still having those energetic spasms. And then I'm getting like, the tingly downloads and, still like getting zaps and release, like talking the story, I'm getting more release like through one foot. I'm like totally a electric cycle up through the left and out through the right. And so my right foot's been like, bzz, almost this whole conversation. But the other thing that I've noticed is that I've started noticing like kind of that, like, I don't know, higher dimensional beings or like in my peripheral vision. And I remember them saying to me that you're going to start seeing things, but like just out of the light of sight, like you'll see them, but when you go to look at them, like you won't be able to see them because then you're like focused in on like the physical reality versus like using your third eye, because that's not my strongest point. My strongest point is telepathy. But it has, since we've come back from that trip, it has like been like definitely dialed up a notch, because like in the last couple of days I saw like a being outside my window just kind of walk by, and then I was sitting with my plant. It hadn't been watered, one of my indoor plants, and I watered it, and it was kind of like very droopy. And after I gave it water, like that evening while I was sitting with it, I could see the vibration energy of it. Like it was like moving like this around the plant, even though the plant wasn't moving. And then the plant did move, and like one of the leaves like waved at me, like it like lifted up and like waved at me. And I'm like, I feel like I'm like hallucinating this, and I'm kind of like blinking my eyes. But at the same time, I know that I've been starting to get these experiences, so it wasn't like too far out. But you know what I mean? Like if that's the first time you're seeing that, you could be like, well, what am I looking at?
That's wild, yeah.
And then last night I kind of dozed off, and it wasn't too late, maybe around 11:30, midnight, something like that. And I kind of dozed off. I was watching some show, and I was like, oh, like I like need to get up and go to bed. And then I was like, oh, but I wanted to watch the end of the show, so I kind of like reran it back to like see the end of it. And anyhow, so before I did all of that, when I like was coming like back to my like awake awareness, all of a sudden this guy is inside my house, and he's like how you would imagine like a ghost, like a shadow, like you see the shadow of the figure, but you could still see like completely like they're the body. There just happened to be like a shadow, but not like a see-through being. So he's like walking through my house, like in front of me, like from in front of the TV, like walking through my house and like the length of my patio. And then I'm like looking, but not looking, because I'm still kind of in this like dazed state, but I'm watching him. And so he walks, and I'm like, okay, that's very bizarre. But, like I was like, I just saw a guy walk through my house, but he was walking like some guy on the street, walking past the sidewalk, like walking on the sidewalk, like just kind of like minding his own business, walking by. And, but I could see him. He had like a pair of khaki pants on. He had a belt on. He had like a collared shirt. I couldn't tell you if it was like a polo or like a cloth shirt. And he had like brown hair, and was, I don't want to say like fair skinned, but he wasn't like light skinned, and he wasn't dark skinned, but somewhere in between, right? That medium skin tone. But like I said, he just like was like, I was kind of like sitting there, and all of a sudden he's like, do, 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 do. I walked in front of me. I was like, okay, then there you go.
Yeah. I always say there's like life everywhere. So I'm sure we're always walking through things, and they're walking through us, and we're all living simultaneously.
Feeling those energies, and it's definitely fun to like get more and more of that multidimensional. Now, I've had you on here for a long time, and I appreciate you like taking the time to like have us like tell our stories, and hopefully it wasn't like too
Well, no, I wanted to hear it. Like, for those watching, I didn't go on the trip, but I watched as kind of an armchair traveler. And so I was looking forward to hearing, the details from the trip. So it sounds like you guys had a great time, had some wonderful experiences.
It was definitely really
amazing.
fun.
How was the weather overall? Did you get too much rain, or was it pretty good?
Gorgeous. No rain.
Best weather we could have. It was supposed to rain.
It was supposed to rain the whole time.
Every day, but one day in Ireland. Like we're in Ireland for 6 days. We had sun, high 70s in Scotland and Ireland the whole time, except for the day we flew, the 4th day when we flew from Scotland to Ireland. It rained that day lightly. while we're flying, and then it rained the last day when I had my food poisoning, and then the day we flew back were the only days that it rained. Otherwise it was blue sky, sunny, and like 78, 79 degrees, 80 degrees, like
Wow.
warmer than normal. And they said it was very unusual. And one of our friends in channeling practice, after we got back, she was intuitively, you know, like channeling a message that we were all with the nature beings, elementals, in another dimension basically while we were there. Like
Mm.
they would kind of put us in their dimension in a sense while we were traveling around in Scotland and Ireland, which kind of made sense because it just seemed like we were in this perfect weather magical world where like there was no bugs except for flies were like the only bugs I saw the whole trip. And yeah, just the sun, blue sky, green grass. It was like best weather you could possibly ask for. And it only rained on days where we were like inside, like inside Dublin Castle that last day, or where we weren't like doing more outdoor activities.
Man, you guys had a really luck of the Irish. Ha ha ha.
Well, we both, Wendy
trip.
and I, have the ability to manifest weather. Like we've
Good.
played around and manipulated with through intention and changing the weather and stuff, and so we kind of know how to do that a little bit. And so we both put our intentions forth, and I'm sure Joan did as well, to have good weather on this trip, and it happened. So it was amazing.
That's so cool. I'm really glad you guys had fun. Good stories.
It was magical.
You're on mute, Wendy. It
It
sounds
was
pretty.
magical
Did
experience.
you guys see Nessie? Did you see the Loch Ness
No.
being? You want to call him a monster, but Nessie.
Well, we got the message. Was it right before we left, through
The Lady
a
Loch
channel?
Ness?
Yeah, through a channeler that we know, that Nessie's no longer alive. So we got that
Okay.
message, I think, before we left. But
Right. But her energy is definitely still there.
well, supposedly there's like an underground tunnel that leads out to the ocean from Loch Ness, and that supposedly, I mean, this channel message we got when we asked about it before our trip, that basically she died in this underground tunnel. They'll never find the body. And but yeah, I mean, I'm sure connected with her in spirit on this trip.
Yeah.
But when we were taking that boat ride on Loch Ness.